Well, good morning. It's a beautiful Saturday here in Germany, cool and breezy weather. Husband's coming home from Romania today, so that makes me happy. I've been here alone all week with my dogs, Noisy and Charlie, and God knows how many wasps. And I made a video about that a couple of days ago. A couple of people didn't like it. I don't know why they didn't explain. Was it because I used the term wasp? Because I am actually a wasp, As you can see, I'm a wasp. But I'm not one of those kinds of wasps. So, anyway, we have been trying to vanquish the wasps. And I think we've been mostly successful, but I probably have a false sense of security. When the landlord gets back, we'll have him take a look at it. At any rate, he's probably going to want to cover up the hole that they made. So, I want to get down to some business. Now, this morning, I got a very interesting email from somebody, one of those SEO promoters. And I was actually rather impressed by his pitch to me. He clearly watched a few of my videos. It wasn't just a generic, hey, I can help you with your SEO so you get more views. This was somebody who actually watched at least a couple of minutes of more than a couple of my videos, which I appreciated. And he even made a very personal appeal to me about, he mentioned the guitars, and he said they were clever parodies that I've done and that I should get more hits and more views and everything like that. And I just want to say to that person, I'm very impressed. And maybe a few years ago, I might have eagerly taken you up on your offer. But I mean it when I say I don't really want a huge channel. And I have a number of reasons for that. Don't get me wrong. I like it when people like what I do. And I like it when one of my parodies takes off. And it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's exciting. Everybody likes a little bit of gratification for what they do. But I have had some personal experiences with a big audience before. And it kind of leaves me a little bit reluctant to try to go viral, because I've had that experience. Not on the level that some people have, but enough of one to know that there's a significant downside to it. I hope you'll bear with me for a few minutes. I will try to explain this. A few years ago, I was living in a different town in Germany, and I write a blog. I actually have a couple of blogs. One of them is a travel blog. The other is a personal blog. And when we moved back to Germany, I decided that I would share the travel blog, because I had lived in Germany before and had experience with being in that town because we were living in the same area. And I just thought it would be useful, honestly. But also because I'm a writer, that's what I've always done. Aside from, jobs like waiting tables and working in retail, which I got nothing against those jobs, but they're not really what I do. So I shared the travel blog, and it got popular. And I was living in this house, and my landlady was a bit nuts, I would say. She was extremely intrusive, and she'd come over whenever she felt like it. She was extremely neat, like a nitpicking type of neatness, and she would, criticize my housekeeping, which I will be the first to tell you I'm not the greatest housekeeper, but she would imply that I'm just filthy, and it was very unpleasant. But my husband and I just tried to deal with it, because moving is a pain, and we've done a lot of moves in our lives. So And we also liked where we were living. I didn't really like the house, but I liked the town. It's right by the Black Forest. Well, the previous tenant, also an American, was friends with the landlady. She told us a story that when we moved in, that I think was probably not 100% true. But she just had a baby, and she and her husband claimed that they needed to move closer to where they worked because of their babysitter. I kind of took her at her word because, as I mentioned in that video that I made about wasps, we had a really tough time in the summer of 2014. That was when we moved into this house. We just wanted to settle somewhere. We didn't want to have like a protracted housing search. So even though my gut kind of was telling me I shouldn't engage with this landlady, we just kind of took what the former tenant said at her word. You know, we just took her at her word. And that was a mistake. Anyway, the former tenant was reading my blogs, and they were public, so okay, but it turned into a situation where she was causing problems for me offline. And kind of, as she was telling me that she didn't want me to invade her privacy, which I never did, but she was very, very concerned about her reputation and her privacy. And she would leave me comments, and then she would delete them later, or she would always remind me in her comments, you know, about her privacy, which I never violated. I never mentioned her name or showed a picture of her, but there was one time when I got really upset with the landlady, and I vented, and there were 2 sentences in there, and I said, well, the former tenants left early, and I wonder if they were telling us the truth. And she got very upset and left me this screed about, oh no, we're friends and everything, and you know, you shouldn't. Fine, I don't want any problems, okay? So I edited for her. Well, that particular tenancy ended on a very bad note, and the former landlady went a bit crazy. We had a problem with an awning at her house. It collapsed one day. There was a storm. Actually, it wasn't a storm when it collapsed. It was just a big, strong breeze. And then after it collapsed, there was a storm. But anyway, she blamed me personally for it, and she wanted us to buy her a new awning, even though we had insurance and she got a settlement. She tried to steal our deposit from us. And it was a fairly large deposit. Not as big as the one that we paid for this house, but it was over 3,000 euros. This tenant sent me a message, and weirdly enough, I had already blocked her, but she sent the message before I blocked her, and I didn't notice it. And it was just, you know, oh, she was kind of messing with my mind, trying to make me out to be crazy and mean, which I'm not. And it really had a bad effect on me personally. It had a bad effect on my psyche. Made it very hard for me to create things, to write, to share things. I'm sure she thought on some level that she had the right to do what she did. But it had a really bad effect on my psychological situation. I felt a bit paranoid. I have a problem with depression, but I got a little paranoid and freaked out and upset. I wasn't even living in that house anymore, and she was watching what I was doing and harassing me. So what I ended up doing was I moved the blogs to another place. And then the new place that I had, I was able to password protect certain posts. And so that's what I started doing. Whenever I felt like I needed to write about the situation that I had been in with this landlady, I would password protect so that only people I trusted could read it. And then we ended up suing the landlady. And I mean, this was Germany, so it was a little bit weird for us. And I have a feeling that perhaps the landlady, knowing what I know about her, she most likely asked the former tenant to write a letter or get involved, and the former tenant didn't want to because she worked for the same company my husband did, and didn't want, again, her privacy. It was so important to her, even though she was violating mine. And anyway, I have a feeling that they had a falling out. Now, this is not really, like, I really don't know. I hadn't talked to her in like 3 years when I found out what happened. I had her blocked on social media. But one day during the pandemic, my husband said, hey, I've noticed that so-and-so is no longer on the company roster. And she's also not listed as a, government person. So I decided, well, I will unblock her and see if I can find out what happened. And I did. And it turned out that she took her own life. And what was really weird about it was this woman who had been so concerned about her privacy and her reputation had 2 funerals, and there were obituaries all over the place. I mean, you can find her funeral on YouTube. But I found out like maybe 3 or 4 months after it happened. I don't think that the situation that we were in had anything to do with it. I think that it didn't help because the lawsuit was settled probably a year before she did what she did. And I know from personal experience that when you have depression, that it can magnify whatever you're going through and make it much, much worse than it actually is. So, not that I had really great feelings of friendship for this person. I was quite angry with her, and I really resented the way she intruded in my business. But at the same time, I understand it was a public blog, and it wasn't like it was a secret or anything, but I just was like, nice work acting like you're on a moral high ground. Like, you don't know anything about me. You've made judgments about me, but you're going and gossiping to the landlady and causing all these problems for us. But, of course, I was very upset and freaked out when I heard about what she did. And that, too, also took a toll on me in terms of my psychology, So for that reason, as much as I like it when people like what I do, I'm not really in a big hurry or rush to have a big channel. I don't really want many, many people looking at what I do, because then you got to deal with all of the side effects of that, which is, people in the comments, or people not liking what you do and deciding they're going to mess with your life. And I don't do this for money. I do this strictly for fun, for creativity. Not everybody likes what I do, and that's fine, but I don't really want to have a bunch of people taking my content, turning it into new content, I guess creators do that, and I understand that, but I've been through it, and I'm not really looking for that. So that's why I really am not wanting a huge channel. but also take into account the fact that we have to be careful what we say. I mean, if you are in the military community, you know about OPSEC. You have to be careful about what you talk about and what you say. So that's another reason why I don't want a huge audience. But I do appreciate the effort, and I do respect the work that guy put into his email to me, because most of them don't do that. Most of them, their shit ends up in my spam filter. So the fact that this one did not and was personal, and this guy actually did watch a couple of things and comment on specific things in the videos, that was impressive. And I do want to encourage him and commend him for that. Thank you. But again, I like it when people subscribe. I like it when people comment and engage. But I'm not looking for a big channel. And this is why. So with that said, thank you for listening, if you made it to the end especially. And hopefully the next video will be on something a bit more fun. Check you later.